Ayers Dugout area, this whole back shoreline as you get into Mesquite Bay. And if you fished this area before, you know there's a tremendous amount of shell that's all up and down this shoreline in here, and especially back toward Fish Camp, all around here. And we've located some decent fishing around here, mostly trout. We had to wade through a few of those. You know, you're getting those 13s to 15s. We start getting on that upper slot of 15s, 15 and a half, 15 and a quarter. There were some that's borderline that, and then every so often we would pull one out that might be a 17 or 18, some pretty solid fish. And one thing we're starting to notice too, after we've already had 2 decent little cold fronts come through here in the last few weeks, these fish are starting to put on a little bit of weight. They're starting to eat a little bit more and getting themselves kind of prepared for the rest of this fall and winter time that's upcoming. So we're still locating these fish in and around this type of structure. You know, we had a little, the last front that came through dropped our temps down. That's significant. It pretty changed things for a little bit, and the fish moved. But they have kind of since kind of drawn come back into these areas again where they typically have been most of the summer when it's been nice and warm. So we've had, you know, our temperatures have raised back up into the upper 80s, low 90s, and water temps have come with that. So therefore our fish, we didn't stay cold enough long enough for those fish to really stay in new areas for an extended period of time since we had a nice little warming trend. So they've kind of migrated back to that. And anytime you have a major change, I run into a lot of people that ask this question a lot. It's why the fish are not where they should be. And as well, there has to be something that's changed to push them out of an area. And anytime you have a major or significant cold front and it drops water temps for several days, whether it's, you know, 2 days to 6 days to 7 days, those fish will move. So you have to adjust accordingly. And if you don't do that, you're going to come into some very unproductive days and some frustration that comes along with that because you're not understanding what's happened. So always pay attention to what's going on weather-wise. That's why I stress that on here to you, is to make sure that you're paying attention to that because it's important to know. Fish are just like we are. Once they're uncomfortable, they're trying to get themselves in an area to be comfortable, to be either warm or cooler or more, you know, feeding opportunities or anything like that. That's why bait and structure are always so important no matter what time of year it is you got to find and locate that stuff. So in and around here in the Ayers Dugout with the shell and stuff, come back around into here. You've got all this in here. You got a nice little point here that comes all the way up to Ayers Point. Nice little area there. You got different types of structure in here. You got shell that's in here. You've got some hard packed sand that's in here. You've got some mud. You got grass. So it gives you all the components that you need. But again, main thing that you got to have is a bait source and that's what type of structure are we fishing. So our winds have now, you know, switched back around to the south-southeast, which it looks like it's going to stay that way this upcoming week. Looks like we've got a little weather moving in toward the end of the week, something to keep an eye on to see what that does for us. Nothing really chilly, colder air that it looks like is not until the following week as it stands as of right now, but that's all subject to change in the next 24, 48 hours. So it's always just make sure that if you're fishing the next day, make sure you pay attention hard to that weather report at least 36 hours out because it's pretty accurate most of the time. But you can make an adjustment depending on where you want to fish so you can line your other areas up if something does not pan out for you based on a wind direction or maybe a certain kind of weather that's moving in. But all this area in here and even around the point, back down here to Ayers Point, this whole shoreline here, we've been wading this and just kind of hitting. It's been kind of a hit or miss spot. Like I said, we've pulled out a few fish the last couple of times that we've fished up here, and it's been okay. It's not been super, super productive, but that's just part of the process is finding these areas that you can really get on there and see if you can't locate them. You know, we've pulled out trout. There's been scattered redfish, an occasional flounder in some of these areas, nothing great. Black drum every so often. So all the species that we're primarily looking for, we've found in these particular areas. You may have to grind on it a little bit. We've had to a couple of times, but that's okay. That gives us an opportunity to really work the area thoroughly. Main things that we've been throwing, you know, our down south and knock and tail, the usual suspect color-wise, you know, in the down south. Of course, been throwing a lot of burner shad since we're on that backside of that new moon, heading into a full moon. We're in our transition, or i.e. wild card days. So I like to start out with the smaller bait, soft dine, starting to come into play for you. So, you know, if you got corkies, you might want to get the hooks out and start seeing if they need to be changed out or some of that kind of stuff, and get your boxes kind of switched up, or get you another box that you put in there that's got a wintertime box, as we will start to have these different weather patterns that move in that, again, that's going to cause change for these fish. But back to what I was saying, the down south in the colors, white ice, bone diamond, twisted tea, magic grass. It's been very good for us in those particular flavors. As far as a burner shad, mud minnow, firecracker, papa pearl, in those flavors have been very good, very productive. It seems the last few times we've been out, the burner shad have been a little bit more productive than either the original or the super. And then we've caught fish on those, but they've been just seem to patternize or gone to the smaller bait for us. So we've kind of stuck with that. Again, 16th ounce jig head because our water's fluctuated as well. It's moved out of here. So we don't have the big high tides that we had for about a 7 to 8 day span. So we're back to kind of normal tides. So also make sure that you pay attention to that, depending on what type of boat that you run. If you be able to get into an area, if you got a falling or rising tide, whatever. It's always, those are key points to make sure that you're paying attention. Knock and tail has been, greenbacks, heavy metal, rogue. Those 3 flavors have been very productive for us. Jerk shrimp, we didn't throw a whole lot of jerk shrimp this week. Did throw a little bit. Snuck in some topwater baits here or there. A little bit of production with that. It's been okay. Double D has been good. Again, I mentioned soft dine earlier. That's starting to be a very productive bait as well, especially once we get into some cooler air on a consistent basis and that water temp starts staying and hovering down around the low 70s or high 60s. That bait will be in more and more better, and that's where your corkies will really start to come into play as well. Just make sure you incorporate your majors and minors into your fishing days, especially right now moving forward into these wild card days, so you can really, once you get onto a bite, that you can stay productive with it. Super flats, all this area here, man, you've got all different kinds of structure. You've got bait that's in here. You want to work this all the way up to the point, down to Blind Pass, all that area down here behind Mud Island, all this area here. You've got the structure that's been in here has been great. It's been that way for a long time, but as we get into these months here, October, November, December, we're going to, South Texas, you can get all different kinds of weather, and it can just be chaotic sometimes. You don't really have a handle on it. But the great thing about this area back behind here is you got grass, you got hard packed sand, you got mud, you got deeper edges, you got potholes, you got everything that you want structure-wise that's back in here. Main thing that you always want is make sure that you got structure and bait, and that's what we've got back here. So you've got tremendous amount of bait that's working in there, opportunity for catching fish, whether you want to catch them deeper or catch them up shallow. Just watch out for your boat traffic, obviously, because there's lots of people that like to fish up in that area. So just get on there in a particular area and just kind of take your time with it. Be very thorough with it. Just keep working that area. Of course, make sure that you're paying attention to what your winds are and that kind of thing there, because we're switched back around to our southeast now, it looks like, for a few days. We've had the north, northeast, northwest winds, so if you get on the backside of mud, got big grass flats, got little islands, it's got some nice little drops there. You got the cut through. You've got this point here, you've got a nice little sandbar that cuts through on the backside of mud. If you fish this area, you know this. When we had our higher tides there for about 7 to 8 days, all these little back lakes lit up. There were some great fish that were back into these areas, mostly redfish that were pushed back into a lot of them. You still can find a few there, but not as many as what was there for a few days. There were some good opportunities that took place, and hopefully during that higher tide that you took some advantage of some of these back lakes that you weren't maybe able to get into there for a little bit. So it's always short little windows. It's always fun to fish a different area, or maybe something that you knew that you haven't been able to fish in a while because of the tides being lower. So that's why it's always important to pay attention to that and see where those water levels are, so you can allow you to open up some new water. But you get on this with the water being back to where it's been normal. You get on this bar, you can work the gut on the edge of it. You can get up there and maybe throw top water in some of the little pond area that's got the grass flats. It's pushed right up against the mangroves areas. Those can always light up and be good as well. You just want to work down this and then get in the back lake here behind mud where the big main cut through is. We've had some moderate success down this particular shoreline here that looks like on the east side of it. Then, of course, when you get up on the north side, on the inside of mud, this whole back shoreline here against the mangroves has been somewhat productive for us. Pulled off some decent little trout here or there. An occasional flounder, redfish mainly, back in this particular area. Nothing great. No big redfish. That's been mostly lower slot. 19 to 23-inch fish is what we've located back in here primarily. An occasional nice trout. up to 18, 19 back in this area too. But main things that we've been throwing in and around here, we've been throwing the down south burner shad. Again, with the transition days, i.e. wild card days, you want to be able to have multiple choices as far as size, profile, color, to give yourself an opportunity to continue to be productive throughout your day. If you don't do that, you're going to kind of cut yourself short and maybe a little bit frustrating for you. So just put anywhere from 5 to 8 different style of baits that's in your box. Suspended baits, topwater baits, jerk baits, whatever. Use all of those. Every one of those, put them in there. If you got multiple people, then everybody can play with something a little bit different and see if there's one thing particular that they want on that particular day that you're fishing more than they want the other things. Majors and minors, major thing, always incorporate majors and minors into your fishing day if at all possible. If it doesn't line up to where you're in between, then just go to work. Start with the smaller bait and just kind of be very thorough in a particular area that you're going to work. Like this here, if you fished on the back side here, you got little back lakes that shoot back up into the mangroves. You got a nice point that's out here on mud. It's got deeper grass beds. We've had some moderate success around those, specifically with the burner shad and double D's. And that's been very good for us. And come out here a little bit deeper with the water that's dropped out on us. This point out here that's got some beautiful grass on it has lit up with some nice trout. So, but again, those been primarily around our majors and minors in that time frame. Again, 16th ounce jig head is all we're using. We're not throwing anything heavier than that. Won't throw anything heavier than that moving forward. So just get your box aligned. Make sure you pay attention to your majors and minors and pay attention to weather that's coming, whether it be rain, new front. All these things are to come into play for you week in and week out, so make sure you pay attention. Shell Point, all the way around to Turtle Pen. This is one of my favorite areas to fish here in Copano. You get on this whole shoreline, man, you can work this thing because you got a great, if you got a southeast, south breeze, maybe even just a southwest breeze, it kind of sets up really good for you. So this is another one of those areas protection-wise that you can get into if it's blowing pretty good or you've got some weather that's coming in. You've got opportunity back here. You've got a couple of little back lake mouths that gives you opportunity. You can get back in there. Terrific shoreline. You've got all different kinds of structure in here. You've got some clump shell. You've got some mud. You got a little bit of sand in there. Scattered grass and that. So it gives you a multiple different types of structure. Again, the main thing that you have to have outside of the structure has got to be a food source. Not a problem. That's not been a problem anywhere that we've been. We've always had a food source that's been working in our area. So your predator fish are going to be in and around that type of thing. So we've worked the points here. We've come back around as we get a little further back into Turtle Pen. I like to work the back shoreline here. You've got good amount of grass that's on it for about a 200-yard stretch that comes out away from your shoreline for a little bit. So and you got a nice little shelf, little easy little spot there. You've got a couple of back lake mouths that dump out into this. And I've talked about this in the past. As you get further back up in there, if you're going to wade this, it gets super soft. So it's just something to be aware of, especially if you're by yourself going to wade these. You can get have a little bit of peril back there because it gets really soft. You'll get past your thighs, maybe up to your waist in some spot that's got super soft, silty mud that's back. So just stay away from that. Maybe just fish it off your boat would probably be the best there. But once you get past that, it hardens back up. So it's just primarily out in front of those mouths like that. Working this back shoreline all the way down toward, the backside into Copano Creek, that whole little lagoon that's back in there, especially when we had our higher tides for those 6 or 7 days, 8 days, whatever it was. That whole area back here really lit up too. Again, when that water starts to come up real high like that, and you see coastal flooding reports and everything, you automatically should start targeting back lake areas or fish further back into some back lakes if at all possible. Because that's what's going to happen. That water's going to rise up, and those fish are going to travel where they haven't been able to get to, especially if there's food source there. They're going to get to it. So you give yourself opportunity. Easiest way to do some of these areas is just get out and wade them. The wading aspect of it, I know a lot of people don't like to do it, but man, it's very thorough, and you can really figure out what your bottom is in these back lake and these mouths, what type of structure's in there, if you got shell in there, if it's just strictly mud, if it's grass, whatever. That's how you find out. Is just get out and put your feet on the ground and start walking it and start fishing it. We've had, like I say, pretty productive days back in here as we head back toward Copano Creek, all this area back in here. You can fish this mouth. You can run back up in the creek. when that water was really high like that, you could run all the way back up in there for a little ways, and there's some little pools and little ponds that are back in there that you get into, and you can find some stud redfish back in there, even an occasional trout. We've pulled out a few flounder out of here, and again, the main culprits. We've been throwing the burner shads. We've been throwing the original size, Twisted Tea, Big Papa, Magic Grass, Purple Rain, all those flavors there. Mud minnow for me personally has been very good, especially in the burner shad size. It's been dynamite. There's another flavor too is called Copperfield. It's been very good in the original size, so it's been another productive bait for us. You got that gut that's right there, and you got your big old nice sand flat. You got a couple of duck blinds, either one that's operational, one that's broken down. You got all this edge here, and that's another thing to be aware of too. We're not too far away from duck season opening up, November, the first weekend in November, whatever that is, and then of course November 1, flounder season shuts down. So always keep that in mind. So if you like to target flounder, you only got a few more days in this month to get to that point before they shut it down for 45 days, I believe it is. So if you're going to target those, make sure you get them now in the next few days. Continue to work all this area out here, because we found lots of trout, a lot of dinkers in there. But if once you get on those trout, and whether they're small or not, there's going to be some better fish that's going to be mixed in there with them. You just got to be patient with it and kind of see what they're really targeting, what they really want. So we've had multiple different flavors of baits that's worked for us in here, primarily on the trout. Most of mine have been caught on the burner shad and original size down south. We've incorporated, again, the knock and tail that's been in there, your double D, top water, an occasional thing. If you really want to throw that, it's been okay. It hasn't been super great, but you'll still get some opportunities with it. It just depends on how long you want to stick with it. But again, weather's not always a factor, but it's a great little area that you can tuck into, depending on what weather system we've got, whether it's just a regular strong south breeze or a cool front or a cold front that's pushing in from the north, northwest, whatever. So you can get some protection back in there and hide a little bit and still be able to be productive and fish it. Again, those are always major things, and especially moving forward, make sure all your equipment's good, make sure your boat's in good condition, everything. Make sure your wading gear is ready good, and you have plenty of clothes, so you don't want to be cold out on the water. Wild card days, majors and minors, make sure you adjust accordingly for that. Make sure that you watch all that. Again, can't emphasize enough this time of year, weather patterns are always very important in your tides. Make sure you're watching what you're doing with those.